I'm ready. Yeah.
You can see the screen, right? You can see the screen.
Yes. Yeah.
So today we shall start off with the manipulating the constraints, and the topic would be say relating to the constraint, like if ever we want to add a constraint, if ever we want to drop a constraint, and any manipulation done on a constraint, we'll be looking in detail about it. Okay. So as we have understood that constraint is one such say a security we are applying to the table. Security in the sense no other changes can be done to a table. If ever I've updated something, consider that I had a null value in the table, and now I'm say converting the null value to some default value, or I want to change the null value to some specified actual value. Okay. So in that case, I am going to say add a constraint, so that if ever I update any such value, I mean, if I'm converting from a null value to any other value, then the constraint will stop from further updation. Okay. And even it is not only meant for the updation, if there is any deletion have to be done, if ever I want to delete some values, or if ever I want to alter some values, so any possible changes I'm going to do it on a table, on the values on a table, then it's going to save those values, and it's going to stop from any such further manipulation. Okay. So likewise, we can even alter the constraints. Say for example, I have got say 4 constraints being applied on a table. Say for example, we have got a primary key, which is a default one, which we must have on a table being applied. Then we have got a candidate key constraint. We have got a unique key constraint, and we have got another constraint which we call it as a check constraint. I don't want the check constraint being present in the table. I mean, on the table, whatever I have applied the constraint as, I want to remove the check constraint. On a table, primary key and the candidate and the remaining constraint is fine, but I no more require the check constraint. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to drop that particular constraint. Okay. Why are we going to drop that constraint? Because we are consider that we are no more using that constraint. Probably I may having say all other constraints which are I mean say more than enough for me for my execution, and the check constraint is no more required because I can just have the other verification done, and the checking of the value can be done with a where condition and with other clauses also. So I no more require the check. So here one such example tells us that remove the order ID constraints from the orders table. So that is the foreign key. The foreign key I have created on the table, that is employee order table is there, and the order ID table is there. Now order table have got a foreign key which reference to an order item table or an order detail table. Okay. So this foreign key I don't want anymore. I want to remove this foreign key because I've got a primary key and the other primary key is there, and the table is already being joined. So when the table is already being joined, or all the other manipulation is being done on the table, and after that I don't want to do any manipulation, any further manipulation. So hence I don't want the foreign key to be present in the table. So I want to remove the foreign key, and I'm making use of the alter command, that is alter table and the table name drop constraint. So you are going to remove the constraint permanently from the database. Okay. And
then what will happen if, say for example, if later at some other point of time we plan to alter the table, or we plan to get some data based on the foreign key and the primary key?
Then again we have to add a constraint.
Okay, so it can be done later at any point.
Yes. Once the drop command works as similar as the drop command in any other case. As you have dropped any column or any of the table, and there isn't any scope for recovering back or roll backing the value. So you are going to recreate again. You are going to again freshly have that column being added to the table. So it is quite similar to that. So once it has been removed, you can add it the next time. Again with the same name, and everything will be the same. I mean the values if you want. Suppose as you say that I have already had a foreign key, and now you have dropped that particular foreign key, and now again you want later, as you said that later I want to have the foreign key again being created or added to that particular table. Yes, you can add the same foreign key to the same column, and again you can continue using that foreign key.
Okay. So, but why not leave it alone when you're not using it? Why don't you leave it just like that in the table? Will it really matter?
Probably there might be a requirement wherein you don't require that particular column to be a foreign key. You want another column to be a foreign key. That might be one reason. Or the other reason is I no more require a foreign key because the table is already been merged, or the table is already joined together, and I don't no more required any copying of the values or any more referencing to be done to another table. So there are all such possibilities are there wherein you don't need. I mean, there isn't any reason of we having the foreign key continued in a database, which may again have the memory being occupied and which may have a more complexity in retrieving the value. So considering that point, I don't want to continue, or I don't want this particular constraint being continued in the database. So I'm going to remove it.
Okay. So let's take, say for example, if you're removing the foreign key, then there is no scope for the two tables to join based on just the primary key, right?
We can join the table with a primary key. That's very because primary key is the very important key or the key attribute. Sometimes what happens, the primary key itself will become a foreign key when it is being referenced to the another table. So there isn't any need for me having a separate foreign key also. So if ever
say for example, vendor ID in the vendor table, and then vendor ID in the vendor side table. Okay, so vendor ID in the vendor table is the primary key, and vendor ID in the vendor side table is the foreign key. Okay. So based on the vendor ID, you're joining both the tables, isn't it?
Yes.
So what if there is no foreign key? Based on what will the two tables be joined then?
Even the foreign key is not there, we can apply any of the join condition there using the key attributes. The key attributes can be the primary key of one table, as you said that the vendor table is there, which is having a vendor ID, and even in the vendor items table we have got a vendor ID.
Okay.
So both these primary key I can consider it, and I can mention that v dot vendor ID is equal to vd dot vendor ID.
Okay.
So primary key can be joined, and with the help of these primary key itself, I can join the table. I can have any such join, or as you say that yes, the values might be same. Sorry, and we don't have a same data type. Then I can have the equi join being applied. Any of the using clause I can use it. Any of the on clause I can use it. But still, without the foreign key, still I can have the join being done. Still I can have the merge done on the two tables.
Okay.
So one thing we have to understand of having a constraint and of not having a constraint. Constraint means it is kind of a protection. I'm going to have the monitoring being done on the table. If I'm going to do any such changes to the table, I'm going to have a check on the table. That is, it's going to restrict the table from doing any further changes unless it has been proved, or it has been provided the privileges, or you have got the right to do it. So it's going to stop you from doing any changes unless you are not considered to be a privileged user.
Okay.
So now, if ever I don't want that particular constraint, then I can drop it. So we can identify the name of the constraint. Why we give a name? Because that is how we can identify a constraint, and we are very specific with the name that I want to drop only this particular constraint, which is of this name.
Okay.
So because we'll be having many such constraints, and I can't go ahead and say drop the primary key constraint, which is the main constraint on the table. I can't remove that one. So with this constraint name, I can just get this constraint from the user constraint, that is user constraint columns from the data dictionary view. It's all stored in the data dictionary. And then if I mention this particular query, that is alter table name, drop primary key or the unique column constraint, then it's going to drop it.
Okay.
Now we know what is a cascade thing, that it is going to carry on, or if ever I want to stop it, that if it is consider that the constraint is carried on to another table, like referencing another table. That is the foreign key constraint. Obviously, it refers to another table. So now it is the cascading being done. So if you delete any of the values from the parent table, then the child table values will automatically get deleted.
Okay.
In that case, I don't want to delete any values from the child table. So I'll cascade the thing, considering that if anything I am going to do it, okay, I am going to consider that I want to have this restriction being applied on the child table. So cascading means it's going to carry on. It's going to carry forward whatever the changes you do. Restriction means it's going to stop. It's going to say have the values intact in the child table, even though if you delete any values in the parent.
Okay. So this particular constraint cascade will delete the record in the child table as well, right?
Exactly. So if I mention here alter table, order ID, drop primary key cascade, so anything related to, say suppose if it is a say foreign key applied on this, say consider primary key is there on one table, table A, and table B is a foreign key, I mean referencing to table B, then if I cascade, then everything will be get dropped.
Okay.
Now we have got another way of say just having the constraint being used and not used. So you're going to enable it and you're going to disable it. So it's quite similar as we do in all other terms that I don't want to use this particular document or this application. I don't want to use it. So when I'm going to use that application, I'm going to enable it or else I'm going to disable it. Right?
Okay.
So this is also quite similar to the same logic. So here we are going to enable it and we are going to disable it. Yes, the constraint will be there. As you said that this, whatever the question you said that yes, foreign key, I may use it in a further stage. I mean, I may require that foreign key in a later period of time wherein I may use that foreign key, right?
Okay.
In that case, we can use this particular functionality. That is, I can enable the constraint, I can disable the constraint.
Okay.
So yes, I no more require now. That is, as of now, I don't want the constraint. I can disable it, and I may have the constraint. Say I may have the constraint in kind of an execution. I may require it, and I may say use it for my other purpose, for other calculation, for other say joining purpose, any transaction for that matter. Then you can enable that.
Okay.
So it's a very simple query again. It's just the term you're going to use, the word you're going to use, that is enable and disable.
Okay.
So alter table, table name again, disable constraint and the constraint name. That is very important. So if we just mention disable constraint, so probably then all the constraint will get disabled or it won't say relate to any one particular constraint. So we have to be very specific as to which constraint we want to enable or disable.
Okay.
So the apply the cascade option to disable dependent integrity constraint. So if ever the, as we know that the child table is completely dependent on the parent table and I want to have the values related to the, both should be related and both should have the values intact. If I do any changes to the parent, then it should be reflected to the child because that is a dependent integrity. Then I can apply the cascade constraint.
Okay.
Yeah, this is an query for, one such example for enabling constraints. So activate an integrity constraint currently disabled in the table definition by using an enable clause. And a unique index is automatically created if you enable a unique key or a primary key constraint. So this, if you just look into the enable clause, so it automatically enables the constraint. So here you can see that we have disabled the same key, that is order ID FK, that is which is a foreign key, and now I may require the same constraint for my any other purpose for that matter. I may require, so I'm going to enable the constraint.
Okay.
And this is a very important point, that is unique index. So we have understood what is the index. That is, index is a pointer which points or which say highlights on the context memory area and helps in fast retrieval of the value. So a unique index is automatically created when I create or when I enable a unique key.
Okay.
So it's like primary key. If I'm creating it, I'm applying or adding a constraint called a primary key to a table. Then automatically I'm creating a unique key which is unique in nature, and a unique index is also being created.
Okay.
A cascading constraint. The cascade constraint clause is used along with the drop column clause. So the cascade constraint clause also drops all multi-column constraint defined on the dropped column. And the cascade constraint clause drops all referential integrity constraints that refer to the primary key and unique keys defined on the dropped columns. So what is the importance of having the cascade constraints, and if I do any changes to the cascade constraints, how it's going to give us the result out of it? I mean, do we have still the values present, or is it completely been removed? Okay. So here, if I use the drop column clause, the drop command on a column, then anything related to the say a constraint which is in the form of a cascade constraint, anything which is related to the referential integrity or dependent integrity, then all those things will be removed permanently.
Okay.
So it is again quite similar to the one that we discussed, that if the primary key is there and the primary key is acting as a referential say foreign key to another table, if I do any changes to the primary key, then the same thing will be applied on a foreign key or the one which is present in the child table.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And the same thing over here, that multi-column are there. That's not only that one column, we have got more than one column, also drops all multi-column constraint defined on the dropped column.
Okay.
And say referential integrity constraint that refer to the primary key or the unique key, then defined if I drop these things, then the value will be dropped automatically, which is being cascaded to the columns in another table or another such object.
Okay.
Now this is one such example. Alter table name, drop column, that's the column name is mentioned, cascade constraint. Now if you can go back, this is relating to the constraint for the column, for the key, whatever we have applied. The same thing I'm doing it for the column. I'm specifying the column and I'm dropping that column. That column constraint only I'm dropping it, which is in a cascade form, which is in a cascade nature. I want to drop it.
Okay.
So I'm drop column order ID cascade constraint. So anything related to order ID which has been cascaded, even that will be dropped.
So here you don't need to mention primary key or foreign key.
See, it is automatically understood that this order ID is a primary key. That's the point I'm trying to say. Here we are mentioning the type of a constraint, but here we are just mentioning the column name, and the column name will be understood whether it is what kind of a key it is. And the cascading thing, if the value is being cascaded to or reference to another value in another entity, then that also will be removed.
Okay.
So it is nothing but submitting the following statement: drops the order ID column, the primary key constraint, the foreign key constraint referencing the primary key constraint will be altered, will be removed, which is in a cascade form. So drop columns are also dropped. Cascade constraint is no more required. For example, assuming that no other referential constraints from other tables refer to the column 1, which is in a PK, that is a primary key column. And it is valid to submit the following statement without the cascade constraint clause to test the table created on the previous page. So here we have dropped the the value which is present in the previous here order ID. So we are here checking whether we can have still the that particular column existing in the database.
Okay.
Because here I have mentioned foreign key, which is order ID. Now here I'm just mentioning order ID. I'm not mentioning whether it is a primary key or a foreign key. So we are checking whether it is dropped already or whether it still is present.
Okay.
Because foreign key, which is a reference one from this parent table, is been removed, is been dropped. So I'm taking the reference table primary key. The parent table primary key, and I'm not mentioning primary key or the constraint name. I'm just mentioning the column, and we are checking whether it's going to be dropped or not.
Okay. So that checking is this query, right? Alter table, drop column, order ID, cascade constraint.
Yes, yes. And this we are testing the alter table test 1, whether the drop column 1 PK, column 2 FK, column 1 cascade constraint. So test 1 succeeded. So we'll get to know the result whether we have got the column being dropped or still they do exist. So we'll get to know whether they are being cascaded or not, whether they are being dropped or not. We are going to test it here.
Okay.
Now use the rename column clause of the alter table statement to rename table columns. Yes, I want to rename the table columns. So aliasing, we are aliasing the column in the the query or the statement as and how we wanted to use it for our execution. But that is meant only for the current transaction.
Okay.
Because if I say that I am going to use the order ID more than once, so it is a long one wherein it is mentioned as ORDER underscore ID. I want a short form of it. I'm going to just have the aliasing done as ORD ID, no underscore, nothing. So it's a continuous one. So when I alias the name, so that is going to reflect only in my resultant table of that query.
Okay.
It's not going to change permanently in the database, and moreover, it's not used in another transaction also.
No. Right.
But I want a permanent change, then there is a term rename. With this rename, we can have the permanent change done to the database.
Okay.
So see here, I'm mentioning instead of the marketing, alter table marketing, that is a table name, and I'm going to rename column team ID to ID.
To just ID. Okay.
So here it's going to change, and this is permanent. Now here, if you say going to view the table, marketing table, then ID will be reflected instead of team ID.
Team ID. Okay.
Now use the rename constraint clause of the alter table statement to rename any existing constraint for a table. Alter table table name, rename constraint marketing PK to new marketing PK. Yes.
Okay.
Because the name has been given even to a constraint also, right? So if ever I want to change the name of the constraint, if ever I want to alter the name which is present in the database to another name, then all the possible changes can be done with the term rename. Okay. Even the column name can be changed, even the table name can be changed, even the constraint name can be changed. So anything, any permanent changes you want to do in terms of renaming any value, any such attribute or an object name or a constraint name on a table, then you can do it with the rename.
Okay.
That's nothing but permanently saving the change whatever you have done.
Okay. So here, what is the constraint here? Again, team ID, right? Team ID, you're changing it.
No,
rename constraint.
No, this here it is column name. So column name would be from team ID to ID.
Okay, that I understood. What about the next one?
So yeah, marketing PK would be changed to new marketing PK. So if ever I want to now comes the point as to in fact a good question. If ever I want to use the constraint name again, so now I have renamed it. I've renamed from marketing PK to new marketing PK.
Okay.
Now I'm going to use the constraint. I can't use the marketing PK henceforth.
Okay.
I have to use the constraint name as new marketing PK, and that is the name which has been given to that column, whatever the marketing column or any such column which has been then present in the marketing table. So henceforth, I have to use only this name, new marketing PK, because that marketing PK is no more existing in the database.
Okay. So this is again nothing but rename constraint is again nothing but renaming the column name, right? except that it's a primary key. The column is a primary key or a foreign key.
Yes, renaming the constraint name. See, I'm not going to, suppose if I say I'm going to do the changes to the column, then the column name will be changed. But here, consider that the column name is marketing ID. Marketing is a table. Marketing ID is the column name. And for that marketing marketing ID being a column which is considered to be a primary.
Okay.
That column have, that column I have got a constraint name as marketing PK, and the constraint name will be changed, but the column name won't be changed.
Won't change. Okay.
But here, if I mention column, then the column name will be changed.
Okay.
Okay, we can have an overview of index. Indexes are created automatically and say manually. That is primary key creation, unique key creation, overview of index. That is create index statement, create table index. That is, we can have the index being created to the column, and we can have the index being created to the statement wherein we can have the fast retrieval of the value. I mean, that can be a manually one. I mean, manually created and automatically created.
Okay.
Yes, this is one such example with create table. So we are creating a table. So this is very, very easy in understanding. This query is very easy in understanding that we have got all the things being used here. We are creating a table with a primary key being added. That is adding a constraint. Yeah.
Okay.
And the primary key is using index again. Okay. And now primary key is considered as an index, and again I'm creating an index over here, and I'm giving an index name also.
Okay.
So table new is being created. Along with the table new being created, we have got the index also being created.
Okay.
So create index with a create table statement. So two things I'm doing. I'm creating a table. Along with creating a table, I'm even creating an index.
Okay.
Now,
so here create new order tables with order ID being the primary key. And the primary key we are using for indexing the table.
Yes.
Or the column. And then we created an index on order ID.
Yes, perfect. So we are creating an new order table, and new order table have got a primary key order ID, and the order ID that is a primary key. We are using it as an index, and the index name is order ID, that is IDX. Means I'm going to have the order ID column of an orders table, new orders table as a index, and I'm giving the name as orders ORD underscore ID and IDX as the what is the index name on that particular table, and then we are going to create both for the table, that is creation is done along with that index.
Okay.
So if ever I want to view the index, I have created an index. I want to view the index. How to view an index? Select index name, table name from user indexes where table name is so and so.
Okay.
So here we are using the user indexes. We will have a detailed say information about how to get the count or how many indexes are there present in the database, how many sources we have created. For example, if we have created many such functions or many such procedures, or if ever we have created the index, views, sequence, synonyms, all these things are present in a data dictionary. Right? So if ever we want to have a look into how many types of views are there, how many types of sequences are there, then we can have the view of it from a user source.
Okay.
Likewise, we have got a user index where we have got a list of all the index being created from different users, and we can have a look into the type of index.
Okay.
Okay. So this is function-based index. As I told you, okay, I'm going to send you across the notes. I forgot completely. sorry, I'm going to send you the notes on the types of indexes. There are bitmap indexes, the B-tree indexes are there. I'll send you across. Okay.
Okay.
So this is function-based indexes. A function-based index is based on expression, and the index expression is built from table columns, constants, SQL functions, and user-defined functions. So this is how I'm going to create an index. I'm going to create a function-based index. And the function-based index is based on some expression. An expression can be any such expression present on a table, or of a table expression, I'm going to create an index. And this index expression is built based on the table columns, or the constants, or the functions, or the user-defined functions. So it can include any of this. It can be formed based on any of this, and I can create a index expression.
Okay.
And again, I can use the same to have a view on it. I'm going to create the index on one particular column, the department name, and the department name, whatever I have created as an index, that I can view it with the help of a select command.
Okay. So upper department name is uppercase, right? The lowercase will be converted to uppercase.
Yes. This is the one. This is the one such function. If you could recollect the whatever we have understood in an uppercase and lowercase, that is, we want to change it the value which has to be present in the result in an uppercase form and in lowercase, and we can mention it over here.
Okay.
And very important note we have to understand about this function-based indexes: the query rewrite enabled initialization parameter must be set to true for a function-based index to be used. So the server treats index with columns marked as descending as function-based index, and the column marked as descending or sorted in descending order. Okay. So here we are going to enable it, and we are going to initialize the parameter which is set to be true. So if it is true, only then we can use the function-based index. And moreover, we are using this the function-based index for certain reason. It is not like we are using the index for just to have the speed. I mean, the retrieval process has to be fast, and we want to speed up the retrieval process. But there are other functionality also. So there are many such requirements, and considering all those requirements and the needs, I can have these index being created.
Okay.
Yes. Sometimes what happens, I've got many index being created on a table. I no more require those index, then I can have the removal of those index permanently from the table.
Okay.
So remove an index from the data dictionary by using the drop index command. So as you know that all these whatever the objects are there, or the constraints being added, and the views being created, everything will be present in a data dictionary. So whatever the changes we are doing changes to the data dictionary. So if you're dropping the constraint, if you're dropping the index, if you're dropping any of the values from the database, then it is going to be removed from the data dictionary.
Okay.
So drop index name, then the index will be removed permanently from the database, from a data dictionary.
Okay.
Now here, remove the upper department name index from the data dictionary. Even that will be removed. So to drop an index, you must be the owner of the index or have a drop any index privilege. So as drop is considered to be the very important command, wherein we can't just any layman or any other person who don't have the privilege, if he's very much well versed and he's very much skilled in this application, but still he don't have the privilege. The privilege is very important for any such user to access the database. Okay, in that case, if ever he is considered to be a privileged user, then he can go ahead and drop the index if ever the index is no more in use.
Okay.
So let's understand this one. Okay, this is not exactly so important.
Purge is to remove all the data, right, from the memory.
Yes, yes. It is all to remove all the data from the memory, and moreover, you can find it from a recycle bin. So it is quite similar to the drop table. So drop table purge has been mentioned because, see, as we know that the drop table means permanently all the data will be removed from the database. From a table space, if we find the table present, if I use drop table, it will be removed. Now we shall be, in the next lesson, we shall be looking into the flashback. So there is a scope of even having this drop table being recovered with the help of a recycle bin. The recycle bin is going to restore back the value which has been dropped.
Okay.
So that is again quite similar to the way how we are going to drop the value. And this purge is nothing but it is again that we are going to use this purge clause is equivalent to the first dropping of the table and then purging it from a recycle bin. That is, we are dropping it and we are having the scope of again recovering back that particular drop table with the help of a purge. Okay. And this clause saves you one step in the process, that is also provides enhanced security if you want to prevent sensitive material from appearing in the recycle bin. Now this is an additional one. Yes, drop is one such command. If we just use here in this query, if I just use drop table name, I'm not going to use purge here. Okay. Drop table name, if I mention, then I may find the table, the value of the table, the data value of the table, any value. It can be sensitive data value, or it can be a data value which can be publicly viewed by any person. It will be present in a recycle bin. But again, I don't want that recycle bin to have this information.
Okay.
So if a purge has been applied, then it's going to even protect those sensitive information, even though it is present in a recycle.
Okay, so the data is still there in the recycle bin, but it's that just that nobody can see it. That's the meaning of purge.
Exactly. Perfect.
Okay. But can the purge data be brought back? So that's what is flashback, right?
Yes, that is what is flashback. So flashback table statement, if you find that you dropped the table in error, then you want to immediately release the space associated with that table, and we can just have the purge clause being included. And again, the flashback table will be there to restore back or recover back the drop table or the value with the help of the purge. And it is going to have the protection being done, having the protection or the security being applied on the value, and still it's going to recover the value.
Okay, so the flashback is nothing but a command which gets back the data which either accidentally or knowingly or unknowingly you deleted it. So it's there in the backup memory and then it brings back the data, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
So it's nothing but the database has been created or it's been designed in such a way that everything is secure. I can't say that, yes, few of the things are secured and few of the things are not secured, that there are possibility of we losing those data. No, we cannot lose any data unless we are sure we are going to keep this data forever. Okay. So we are going to lose the data, only those data we are sure that yes, I no more require these data and I'm going to permanently remove it. But if you're sure I want to have this data, these are sensitive data which have to be protected, and all the possible steps are there to protect the data and again to safeguard the data, permanently saving the data.
Okay, say for example, if I delete some data today and then I realize after probably 10 days or 15 days that I want it back, will it still be able to be brought back using the flashback table statement?
There is one such possibility is there, wherein we have got the charge number, the system charge number is there. With that, when you have dropped it, again the time limit is there obviously, and the time and the date and the system. If this is a system I'm using and it has been dropped from that particular system, I'm going to give the number of it, and it's going to fetch or it's going to restore back the data. So there are two possibilities. One is I have to be very specific as to which table have dropped, And if I've dropped that particular table from that system or from that time, see, I know that this has been removed, and I can't keep a track of okay, when it has been removed and from which place, which location it has been removed. There is a query wherein we can just write the query and the server itself will get it. It's like a data pumping. The data is going to be pumped from the one such way wherein the data can be restored back. I mean, it is going to get it in the external table, and then it is going to have the data again present as a saved database in a table space.
Okay.
So it's nothing but it's going to pump the data which has been removed, and after getting the data, it is going to restore back.
Okay.
Yes, it will be having the record of when it has been dropped, where it has been dropped, from which system it has been dropped, and it's going to again do the needful of restoring back the complete data as a whole.
Okay.
Yes, now flashback table statement enables you to recover tables to a specified point in time with a single statement. Okay, I want to have a recover of the table done, and I want it from that specified point in time. Say I know that I don't know when I have dropped it, which time I have dropped it. Then from that point I'm going to get the statement and I'm going to recover back the statement. And restores table data along with the associated indexes and constraints. One thing we have to keep in mind, if I drop a table, then anything attached and everything attached to the table will be removed permanently. Alright? So I can't say yes, I do have a constraint, I do have the index, and I have got the other things being created on a table, which even though the table has been dropped, so if the table is dropped, anything and everything being attached to it will be dropped permanently from the table, from the database, from the table space. Okay. So here, if the indexes and the constraints are created on the table, then even those will be recovered back along with the table.
Okay. Then what about the cascading? If the table, you said that when the table drops, everything associated with the table is also gone, right?
Yes. Yes.
So what happens then if there is a cascading there?
Even that will be restored
back. Okay.
Even that will be restored back, but keeping in mind that the table do exist, that particular table do exist.
Okay.
So if it is an employees table and then a copy employee table, and you have dropped the what is that, employee table, but a copy employee table has been restricted from dropping it. I'm restricting, but whatever the constraint has been added, like a foreign key constraint, will be removed. Once you restore back the employee table, the foreign key table will be present, and the table also will be present.
Okay.
So here we were talking about the system change number. Enables you to revert the table and its contents to a certain point in time or a system change number. The system change number means the time and the date and the seconds, everything is been recorded from when you are going to restore back the content of the table. The complete table you are going to restore back, you can have the restore of the value being done. From that certain point in time, I'm going to do it. So it's not system charge number. Sorry, I made a mistake. Pardon me. It is system change number. The system change number, it's going to give us the complete information. That is, it is again in a form of the value which is recorded in a sysdate. Sysdate, how the sysdate will be there, what is the date format we are using it. Likewise, it is get the information.
Okay.
So SCN is an integer value associated with each change to the database, and it is unique incremental number in the database. Every time you commit a transaction, a new SCN is recorded. So it is nothing but if ever I want to have the SCN being recorded, if I commit any transaction. Commit means what? It's a permanently saving into the database.
Yeah.
So if I use that, then I'm going to create a new SCN.
Okay.
So if I do any changes, say for example, I have altered the table, I have added a new column. The SCN before altering the table was different. Now I have added a new column and I have inserted the values. And it is nothing but it's a completely new table altogether in terms of the value, in terms of the additional information. Right? So in this case, I can have a SCN being created, a new SCN being created. So I'll create an alter table, add the column, and I'll mention commit complete. So once the commit has been completed, it's nothing but it's going to save the new column. And once the saving of the new column is done, then automatically a new SCN will be generated. So every time you give a commit command, every time the SCN will be created.
Okay, so every time when you execute a statement and when you say commit, the change becomes permanent, right?
Yes, the change becomes permanent, and the permanent change will be having some number, and that is called as an SCN.
SCN number, and that can be used to get back the data, or it can be used to go back to the previous version of whatever changes we made.
Exactly. It is quite similar to flashback. It is quite similar to save point. If you can recollect to the save point, you remember that we have created some few save points with a save point name S1, S2, S3. And I've deleted any value, and I'm going to use a rollback command wherein I can roll back to that particular save point.
Right. Okay.
Save point, right? So I'm going to mention rollback to S2. I'm specifying the save point S2.
Okay.
Even though S3, S4, S5, and S1, all other save points are there, but I'm very particular to S2. Then I'm mentioning that save point. I'm getting, or I'm storing back the value which are present in the S2.
Okay.
Again, here it is similar. If I have got the the permanently saving of the data is done, and I've got the SCN being created, I can use this and I can recover back the data from which is being dropped. Right. So yeah, this is a statement, a syntax. A repair tool for accidental table modification. Restore a table to an earlier point in time. Benefits ease of use, availability, and fast execution, and is performed in place. The very important thing is what is the use of a flashback table. Flashback table, as you said, that accidentally I may have dropped the table, or with knowing, with an intention I have dropped the table. So anything it can be. The reason can be intentionally or unintentionally. The table has been removed. So now I want to have the table back into my database. Then I can use this statement. So the syntax goes like this: flashback table schema, that is the table name. And the table, if ever I have got the table complete details to the table name, and if I've got many such tables, then to timestamp. So timestamp is what? It is the date data type.
The date, seconds, and
exactly. It starts with year. It's not going to start with century, because only date is going to start with century and ends to seconds. But here we want even the fraction of seconds. So I'm going to use timestamp and SCN, that is the system change number, and the expression. If ever the expression, we know the expression, we have to mention the expression. And then enable or disable triggers. So triggers, what are triggers? We'll be looking in detail in PL SQL.
Okay.
But we have to mention if the triggers have been applied on a table, then the triggers have to be enabled or disabled. So if ever they are disabled, then we can enable it, or if ever they are enabled, you can disable it. As per your requirement, you can use the triggers. Okay. The enable and disable command on a trigger.
Okay.
So here you can invoke a flashback table operation on one or more tables, even on tables in different schema. You specify the point in time to which you want to revert by providing a valid timestamp. By default, database triggers are disabled during the flashback operation for all the tables involved. You can override this default behavior by specifying the enable triggers clause. Okay. Very important thing is whatever the changes you do to the database will be stored in the database permanently. Okay. So very few changes are not stored permanently. Like for example, delete. Yes, delete is removing the value, but still the space do exist, and there is a scope for restoring back the value, that is with the help of a rollback. Similarly, over here, see, I have deleted many such tables. It's not only one table. As you said, the cascading, if one table has been dropped, then the other table will also be dropped because it is a cascaded one. But there are any other such schemas are there which are relating to this. For example, a view are there. Views have been created. Indexes have been created. Sequences have been created based on this table, or say we have got the synonym been created. So any such schema object have been created and the tables have been attached, and all these are been dropped or removed permanently, then the flashback is going to restore back permanently into the database.
Okay.
Okay. And triggers, as it is said that when the flashback will apply, then automatically it is been disabled. I want to enable it. Why I want to enable? See, the very important thing of trigger is it is going to fire back on an event. If any such event pops up which is going to destroy the database, then the trigger is going to fire back on that event and stop the error or the issue to do any changes to the database, and it's going to protect the database from such issues.
Okay.
Okay. So here it will be automatically, I mean by default it will disable, but I want to override now. Then I can enable it. Now consider it has already been enabled. Now you have already enabled the trigger. Now you can use the disabling command to disable it. Okay. Now using a flashback table statement, drop table EMP2. The table has been dropped successfully, and select original name operation drop time from recycle bin. So I am going to get the original name of a table. I'm going to get the operation. What is the operation? What was the operation? That is a drop was the operation which you used the one of the DDL command, and the drop time. So you can make a note that the drop time is in a timestamp form. That is year, month, hours, minutes, seconds, and fraction of seconds. Okay. So this is in this format, and flashback table EMP2 to before drop. So this query will help me in recovering back the table before drop. So before drop, how the table existed, how the table looked with all the values present intact into the table. The same thing, the similar view of the table will be found.
Okay.
Temporary table. Okay, we create this temporary table that holds the data only for that certain duration or a session. So for example, I want to use this drop. Say I've deleted the data. Okay, I've dropped the data. Now I want to restore back the data. Okay, but I want to restore back the data only for on a temporary notice. I'm not going to use it for a long time or forever. Alright. So in that case, I can create a temporary table which can be used for certain transactions, certain sessions, and then again it will be removed from the database. Now how to create a temporary table? Create global temporary table cart on commit delete rows. So this is going to create the table, and the table name will be mentioned. And now on commit delete rows. So if ever I want to delete any rows, then I have to commit the rows. That is on commit. If the values are committed in the database in that table, then that is permanently saving the value, and I'm going to delete the rows which I don't want to use it. I want to remove those values from that table. Now I can view it with the help of the select, that is select start from orders where order date is this date. So this create command will help me first by creating the global temporary table and the table name, whatever the table name is there, I'm going to mention it. And here we are deleting the rows, that is, we are going to delete the settings that is created to the temporary table, and in that the value whatever is present in that table for those rows, and here it is bound for the temporary transaction only. So if I insert any value, now I have recovered back the table and I have created a temporary table to it, and now I want to insert any value to it, then it is going to take those values, but again it is going to truncate the values or the rows after each commit. Okay. Now preserve rows, if ever I am to preserve the rows, then I have to set the setting as, that is, preserve the rows, that the term I have to mention, I mean the keyword, that is preserve rows, and I can have those rows even though the insertion is done, still I can have it saved in the database. Even the whatever the database truncates the table when you terminate the session, still the value will be there. Okay. So what is the use of creating a temporary table? You can create a temporary table to create a static table definition, that is, it's going to restrict any changes to be done, and moreover you are using the table which has been restored for a temporary purpose. And like permanent table, temporary table are also defined in the dictionary, and their indexes do not automatically allocate a segment when created. Instead, they are allocated when data is first inserted until data is loaded in a session or the table appears empty. Okay. So the very important thing of having this temporary table is we are going to have the table, and the changes being done to the table will be saved. And now if ever I don't want this value, I mean you can have the table being removed. The temporary table will be again being removed after the session is done, after the whatever the duration has been given is done. Okay. Now the external table. So what is the use of creating an external table? The external table is a read-only table whose metadata is stored in the database, but whose data is stored outside the database. The external table definition acts as a view that is used for running any SQL query against the external data without requiring that external data first be loaded into the database. So very important thing of why we create an external table. What is the use of having an external table? It is just meant for the read-only purpose. From the metadata, I want to view only the data, I want to have a look into the data, and I want to have this data. Very important thing is loading, for the loading purpose. So if you can relate to the SQL loading, copying the data files from one such hard disk to another hard disk, from one such database to another database, then this external table is of very much useful. Okay. And moreover, the external table can be queried and joined directly and in parallel without requiring that the external table can be loaded in the database. So you can use any of these operations, SQL, PL SQL, and Java, to even have the parallel joining or parallel transaction to be done on it. And even the DML operation is applied to it.
Hello? Hello, Archana?
Hello?
Oh, I couldn't hear you at all when you started the external table. Now I hear you, yes.
Oh, you can hear me? Okay. So is it like external table completely you did not hear, or only the last few lines?
No, I couldn't hear the whole of the external table. You started it off and then you went mute.
Oh, okay. I don't know, because here everything was perfect. Probably some network error.
Network issue, could be, yeah.
Could be, yeah. No, this external table, you can have a look into this external table. I mean, later on, you can just go through the points. External table is nothing but it has been created only for a read-only purpose. I mean, it's from a metadata. You can have a just a read-only done of the values from the database, then you can have a look into the content of the data present in the external table. And moreover, this external table acts as the data pump. If you're pumping any value from the database and you're storing it in a table, so that has been stored in an external table. And moreover, for the loading of the value, say from one file to you're loading it to another file, then I can say this is very much useful, wherein you can say load and you can have the data present in an external table.
Okay.
And it acts as a, like any other permanent table for that matter. If you want to apply the DML operation, it will be done, and you can even join the table. Parallelly, you can have the any such manipulation done to the table, even that is possible. Okay. Okay, so creating a directory. So these are the few things we can. You can just have a look into these syntax, Lakshmi. We can have a go through these syntax, and not much explanation is required, because how to create an external table and what is the use of an external table. And if ever I'm having the Oracle loader, to create an external table for the loading purpose for an SQL loader, we call it as a Oracle loader. Then how to have the creation done with the help of this syntax, everything has been given. Not much explanation is required, so we can have a quick go through this. And I think it's time up. So you have got any questions other than these? I mean, the flashback query, any other doubts relating to other topics?
I'll go through the session, Archana, and then maybe once I start to look through it, if I get any doubts, I'll ask you in tomorrow's class.
No worries. Yeah, take your time. You can have a look into the slides and go through the complete notes, everything. And then if you have got any doubts, then we can even have a quick go through the topics tomorrow. I mean, have a brush up of the topic. Then we can start off with the next lesson. Okay?
Sure. Okay.
The next lesson, I guess, it would be relating to the data dictionary. This we can have a quick go through again, because it is more of a syntax wherein if ever we want to know how we can get the information of the how many views are there and in detail about a data dictionary structure. It's more of a architecture, I can say. It's more of a in detail knowing of an architecture of a database. And we can have a go through these syntaxes, and we can finish off this lesson also.
Okay.
I think most of the things we are done in SQL. So almost manipulating large data set is not much required. Yeah, subqueries, retrieving data using subqueries. We can have a quick say a revision being done on a subquery, because we have already covered the subquery. I don't know, it has been put in the last lesson. So yes, this is a high advanced SQL. These are all called as the advanced SQL. Extension to SQL is PL SQL, but here in SQL we have got an advanced SQL also. So from subqueries, all these flashback query and the constraints and manipulating the constraint, managing the schema objects, and the retrieving the data with the help of a subquery, all these are called as the advanced SQL.
Okay.
So we can have a quick go through with this also. Okay, then we can wind up the session for today.
Yeah.
And tomorrow we can have go through with the remaining topics. And by end of this week, I want to finish SQL so that next week we can start off with the PL SQL.
Sure. Okay.
All right, Lakshmi, then. Take a leave.
Thank you, Archana. Yeah, thank you, Archana. Have a good day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.